I actually heard news the past, I don't know, three months ago that you were involved in some kind of accident, and I kind of want to first talk about this because I'm curious how you're doing, what that was all about. Like, I saw that there was a GoFundMe page, and I was like, man, I just want to hear about how that happened and honestly how that changed your mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a absolutely, I would say, life-changing event, and it's been very interesting interpreting that event because obviously I'm trying to come at it from a stoic approach. But about 3 months ago, I was in quite a serious motorbike accident. I was in Bali in Indonesia, and I'd only just arrived there. We'd been there for like 5 hours, and we were on our way back from dinner, and I was on a bike. I had my buddy on the back with me. I'm very confident on a bike. I've spent months in Bali before, and as we were coming around this corner, a car was in our lane. And we weren't going very fast, but because of where the car was, I needed to avoid hitting the car, and myself and my friend came off really not going very fast, but unfortunately I managed to connect with a pole. There were these like white picket poles around the corner, and no other injuries. Like, my legs were fine, my friend's legs and stuff were absolutely fine, not even scratches on our hands, but I managed to go head on with the pole, and it went through my visor. I had a half pot helmet on, so it protected my head, but it went through my visor, managed to break my eyebrow here. I smashed my cheekbone into multiple pieces, broke my nose, dropped my palate. I was sitting with like a skew face and a completely loose cheekbone. Every time I would swallow, my cheekbone would suction against my face. So I ended up in quite a bad state when I was in Indonesia. And I thought, you know what, it's fine, things will resolve. I've got medical insurance. It's something you always have to have when you go overseas there. And was in the hospital for about 2 days. All the surgeries and everything were lined up, and was ready to get it. And just before the surgery, this was 2 days after the accident, I was just getting the last clearance from insurance, and they managed to find a loophole to not pay. So basically, what they said is you have to have an international biking license. So you can't just have a normal bike license. There was a very specific type of license you needed to have, something that none of my friends, anyone I know in Bali doesn't actually use this. It's literally something you buy. Anyway, they found this one kind of license that I didn't have, and for that reason, they weren't going to pay out. So I was stuck. I've been sitting in the hospital for 2 days, and now all of a sudden, I had this like $30,000 medical fee that I just had to pay immediately. And yeah, it was quite a shock to myself. I have my own online company, so we sell light therapy and sauna products. And I literally, in the back of my mind, I'd had this product we were meant to launch pretty soon. And I'm sitting in the hospital bed with my face in like a couple of pieces. I can hardly see out of my right eye. And I'm busy creating web pages to launch our new product just to make sure that I can pay for this surgery. So I'm sitting there with one eye creating the landing page for this sauna blanket that we launched. And it was definitely way too early. I wanted to let people know about it earlier, but I just didn't have time. So in the hospital bed, created this page, and then that was one of the ways that we're able to raise some funding. Some families set up a GoFundMe campaign also, which was great. That also helped out a lot. But long story short, I managed to get the surgery, and then I flew back 10 days later back to South Africa, which is where I currently am now. And then it's just been a healing process since then. A lot of it physical. Obviously, my face has recovered. Had a lot of scar tissue. Like, this eye was actually completely closed because of just the amount of swelling on my eyebrow. I've still got a couple of bolts in my face. I've had some removed here. I had a lot of numbness across my face. That's all come back. I have a little bit of numbness here on my lips. But other than that, obviously, it's the psychological thing, processing an event like this, which has been really interesting, especially coming from a stoic approach.
For sure. Like, I guess counting your blessings, it's a good thing that you had the helmet on and that you didn't crack your skull / smash your brain, because I doubt we'd be having a conversation here today, and I doubt you would still be off doing your own thing. Probably not. And I'm truly glad to see that it was just some facial stuff and not your brain. But man, yeah, I bet you live each day kind of like, wow, slightly grateful. Like, I bet there's some days where you're like, dang, that's unfortunate that it happened. But then you're also like, well, there's so many bright sides to it on the other side.
Absolutely, Harley, and I think that's the approach you have to take with anything in your life. You need to question, how am I interpreting the story? I spoke to a woman who I was passing her on the beach, and we knew each other just from walking our dogs on the beach, and she heard that I was in a bike accident, and she told me that she'd also been in an accident, and she was depressed for 3 months after her accident because she kept thinking, like, why did this happen to me? Why was I in that situation? And I was completely shocked because from my side, I've been living with complete, like, a spring in my step. I'm so grateful and happy to be alive. I could look at the same situation and go, why was the car in my lane? Why did that happen to me? I shouldn't have been in that situation. But the story I tell myself is not that. So I keep that side in check. The story I keep telling myself, which I really feel is the true one, is that my brain still works. I didn't break my neck. I can still walk. I now have a completely different view on life. I mean, I will be walking in the morning and see a sunrise, and I look at that and I get to go, that's bonus. That is something I might not have experienced had things gone the wrong way. Either I would have been really badly injured, or I could have been dead very easily. You know, you hit a pole coming off a bike, it's a pretty serious accident. I could have ended up being a lot worse. So the story you tell yourself is something that, you know, you watch, and it's something a lot of people don't. A lot of people, I think, default into playing the victim. And I think that's kind of the human natural way to go, is to play the victim. And I think if you can just be a bit more conscious of that, which is something you know, like I've done with the situation, is just to consciously go, I'm going to choose the story that I tell myself. I'm going to choose how I interpret that event. Absolutely changes, you know, whether you're going to depression or whether you live the next few months or rest of your life filled with gratitude.
Yeah. I wonder if you talking to her about it might have shifted her worldview. Like, I wonder if she heard how positive you were and was like, maybe I should be a bit more positive.
Yeah, I
maybe
think
I'm
you're
less
right.
a
I
victim.
think it was a bit of, you know, in her face, like something like it seemed strange that I wasn't in that depression. But it wasn't something I was going to, you know, very much point out to her and make her feel silly about or anything like that.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's like that this idea of memento mori, where you're like, remember you must die. Sometimes it's kind of cliche where it's like, yeah, I'll die, but, you know, I got 60 years to go. I'm 20 something. I got time. No problem at all. Sure, it's a good idea to remember that you will die, but I bet it sometimes just doesn't hit you as hard maybe as now, where you're like, I probably could have died and I was only 20 something, and you know, I bet it shifted your whole perspective of that phrase alone.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've ever seen, but I've got this memento mori calendar that I fill out. And just if someone doesn't know what memento mori is, it's a Stoic philosophy which means remember death. And the Stoics don't view this as something dark or negative. It's actually a way to invigorate your life, to remember that you're not going to live forever. And the Stoic calendar that I have has got blocks on it, and every single week you color in one block. And there's 80 years worth of blocks on that calendar. So I'd already been thinking, memento mori, I'm coloring in these blocks. Okay, I've lived 30 years now, probably got another 50, just give or take, but probably another 50 years. And that would invigorate my life and that. But now, it was just very much in my face that you think you've got 80 years, you don't necessarily have that. Some freak kind of accident could happen, and, that could be your last week. So the memento mori principle was already in my head, but I think for a lot of people it's important to think about the fact that maybe you won't die of old age, and what are you doing today that is going to ensure that you are actually living your best life today and not planning that for 20 years, 30 years time when you think you're still going to be alive and you're going to be in the old age times. It's not necessarily, it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, it's totally not, but I'm sure, like, when you're filling out the calendar, you're like, oh, I got, 500 more weeks to go. But now I bet when you fill it out now, it's like, I bet you count the blessing of that fill out a lot more now. It's like, okay, wow, I get a whole nother week. But I have a question for you. It's like, this is probably not the best question, but are you currently satisfied with how you've lived your life so far? Like, what happens if Nick would have died 3 months ago? Do you feel as if you would have been satisfied with how far you've come? It's an interesting question, but I bet no one's fully satisfied with how far they've come. But, like, are you proud of what you've done on this earth so far and the impact you've made?
So it's a very interesting question, but it's actually something I will always try and avoid because, again, this is one of the principles of Stoicism, and it is you focus on what you can control and you don't let things that you can't control, have any effect on you. And the past is something you can't control. So whatever
For sure.
happened in the past, even if you look back at it now and you think you should have done things differently, at the time, that was the exact right thing you were meant to do. So at the time, whatever you did, even if it was a mistake, you had less information than you do today. So there's no reason to regret anything that actually happened because in that moment, that was the exact right thing for you to do. So to answer your question, I do think, that I lived to the best that I could have given that information. And going forward, which is something that I can control, I will have a new outlook on life and a new perspective based on that accident even and seeing things now. So I don't think anything before the accident should have been different because it couldn't have been. I didn't know that I was going to be in an accident and I hadn't been through that process. But now that
sure.
I have, I can look forward and I can make different decisions that are going to be, part of my future. And that is absolutely something that I can control.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, it's not the greatest question, but it's like now that you have the control, I guess, what are some things that you change about your daily habits or your now trajectory in life? Like what has changed since the accident in your mind or in your actions?
So I think these two things might actually sound a bit contradictory, but the one thing is a sense of urgency. I think there's a lot of things that I was planning in my life, especially in a business sense, that I thought, this will work out in about 5 years. And now in some ways, I feel uncomfortable. And I know that sounds negative, but I mean it in a very positive way. There's a lot of things of where I am right now that I feel so uncomfortable about that it makes me go to action. So that what I would say is the one thing. Is this sense of urgency that's happening in my life, that the place that I want to be is not where I am right now. So what are the action steps that I can focus on in order to get myself there? It doesn't mean that I'm not happy with where I am now. It just means I can put some actions and focus on those specific actions now to get me to that place. The other thing is also, I would say that I'm a lot more conscious or present now after the accident. I think there's a lot of things that are in my daily life that I was taking for granted. So it could be something small, like when I'm walking my dog on the beach, I'm a lot more present now, and I look at him, I look at the sun, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is bonus life, and I'm so grateful to have this, which I was before, but I'm just a bit more tuned into it right now, and realizing how lucky I am to be alive and how we should be grateful for such small things. And by doing that, I'm also a lot less stressed about small things. Small things that might have bugged me are just irrelevant now. Something will pop up now, and I will catch myself. If something small is stressing me out, I go, well, what? I could have been dead. I might not have experienced even this stress. So even stressful little things now, I'm trying to retell my story that there's something I should be grateful for.
That's a great perspective. Yeah, I really like that. That really makes me think, because I'll get a text or something and it'll sometimes ruin my entire mood, and it's like, I can't control that I received a text or an emergency scenario is occurring. It's like I can only control that, I don't get too stressed out about it, that I'm grateful that I have the ability and tools to solve problems, and that I am alive today. It's truly a great perspective, because I feel like I fall victim to just getting so stressed of something so small and then realizing later, you worked yourself up, you didn't sleep that night very well, when in reality the scenario you were worrying about was really not even a big deal. And yeah, it's really, really great point. And I like the urgency point too.
How that's often something that you build up in your head. I mean, I don't know exactly what you meant now, but let's say the text or whatever and what that could have led to, you often look back and you go, oh my gosh, why was I stressed? That actually didn't turn out to happen.
Exactly. It's like, I think there's a quote, you probably know it better, but it's like, we suffer more in our thoughts than we do in reality. I forget who said it, but
I think that was Seneca, if I'm not mistaken, but I know the quote, it's suffer more in our imagination than we do in reality.
Yeah, it's very true. And yeah,
I think one of the things though is you go through, as you get older, you're going to go through a ton of those situations, and you're going to look back at them and either realize that they didn't happen, or if they did happen, you will realize that you're a better person because of it. So even my accident now that happened, I'm busy processing it now, but I still I have a feeling towards it where I'm almost grateful that it happened. Almost to the point of, if you told me I could go back in time and have that accident not happen, I wouldn't change it. Because I think of the positives that have come out. I think about the perspective I have on life for the rest of my life. I wouldn't have that if that accident didn't happen. So you will go through these challenges and stuff in life, but as you go through them, you realize that every single one of them will either it's either a good thing or it's going to be a lesson for something for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's true. I think this might come from like Buddha, where it's like, whether it's a good scenario or bad, the soul will always learn. Like, you're always going to be gaining from a scenario, whether or not in the current moment it was like, oh, this is very positive or very negative. It's like, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you're learning lessons and you're growing in experience, and you're just becoming a more experienced person. And yeah, it's very interesting.